Hello everyone, this is Fabri Loan. Welcome back to another video. And today's video, it's a sort of continuation of my latest one, which was about my most wanted sequel, and that was a video response. This is actually my own video, or at least it's not a video response for a while, for a change. And as I said, it feels like a sort of part two of that, because while I was making the list of my most wanted sequels, this specific these other games, these other series, obviously popped into my mind. And I say, oh, of course I want more from these. But I was thinking that perhaps sequels was not the right things I want out of this series. It wasn't because at times just churning out sequels, it's not the right thing to do, especially for certain series, because that's also the problem. It's easy just to say, oh, I want a sequel for this and this and this and this. Again, like sometimes a game doesn't need a sequel. Sometimes sequel is not the correct way to go. It's more complicated than it seems, to me at least. Or maybe I'm just thinking too much into it. But again, after that, I was thinking about the correct terminology for these specific series here. And my first instance was to go for reboot, so my most wanted reboots. But then again, in one case, for example, reboot was not the right option, was not what I want from this series, because in my opinion, reboot can be too drastic. You just start from scratch, disregarding everything that happened before. It's more, as I said, it feels very drastic. It can work in certain cases, but not all the time. And so I decided to go for a more vague terminology, if you allow me, and that's just like the series I want to see revived the most, basically. Um, I decided to ignore the obvious choices for me. So I'm not going to talk about Legend of Dragoon, because of course I want this series to be revived, but it feels like I'm talking about this series all the time, either on my videos or on Facebook or whatever. So of course I want that, but I know it's not going to happen, so whatever. And even with this, just like my sequels, most likely it's not going to happen, maybe never going to happen, but who knows? The point of this video is just to speculate. Um, so I decided to go for some other series that I don't talk about them too often on my channel, two in particular. Um, and we only have three series here. I didn't want to go for those long list of RPGs that will never receive sequels, because again that would be too obvious. I decided to um, think a bit deeper about fewer series. So hopefully it's going to be interesting. I'm very happy with my choices and with my reasoning. I got my notes here, so let's go. Um, my first choice, and again, it's one of those series that immediately when I wanted sequels popped into my mind. Like, of course, I want a new game from this series. But yet again, then it was also one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video, because it's just another sequel. What we need from this series? I don't think so. And the series in question is Wild Arms. I absolutely love Wild Arms. It's among my favorite RPG series. Um, I think it really struck the right chords with me, because I'm a huge fan of Western movies. So combining JRPGs with Western movies felt like a dream come true to me when I played the first Wild Arms on the PlayStation 1. The problem is that that game was completely overshadowed by Final Fantasy VII. I mean, talking about stealing someone's thunder, I mean, Wild Arms was released, I think, a week or something before Final Fantasy VII, so of course it didn't stand a chance. But it did well, all considering that it was up against that monster. Um, Plus, we got 5 sequels. So we got 5 main Wild Arms games. We got Wild Arms XF on the PSP. So it's actually a rather big series. We got 7 games plus a remake on the PS2. But and most of the game though are concentrated on the PS2, and that's also why I want the series to come back, because we haven't seen a new Wild Arms game since the PSP, since Wild Arms XF that was released in 2007. Wild Arms 5, the last number game, was released in Europe in 2008, but I think in 2006 in Japan or something like this. So it's been at least 10 years since the new Wild Arms game. Interesting enough, I think, I think maybe it could have been as long as a year ago or something like that. I don't remember. I mentioned in my previous video when I was talking about Phantasy Star. I remember that all of a sudden on a Facebook group about our fans of JRPGs and something like that, there was this huge announcement like a new Wild Arms game. It's been made. And everyone, me included, was absolutely salivating. It was like, finally, a new Wild Arms game. And then reading the article, they say that it was exclusively on mobiles, Japan only, and since then I haven't heard anything about this project. So, is it going to happen? Is it happened already and we didn't even know? Probably both. But still, Wild Arms 5 and XF are the last games in the Wild Arms series. The series was developed by a studio called Media Vision, and they're actually bigger than I thought while I was looking at information about them, because I didn't realize they actually are the guys who developed Valkyria Chronicles 3 and Valkyria Revolution. They also were involved with some recent Shining games, and they also developed Summon Night 6, so they've been around. But obviously Wild Arms is their main series. So I really want Media Vision to return to Wild Arms. But what do we need? As I said, I don't think just a random sequel. There you go, Wild Arms 6. Enjoy. You're welcome. I don't think that's the right thing. That's the right move for a series, as I would say as important as Wild Arms. Though I realize it's actually pretty niche, because and let's face it, it's not the most popular series in the world. Obviously, there are several games, as I said, like 7 games at least. I think there was a mobile game actually, so let's say 7 or 8 games. So it's a pretty big series, so there must be a following. Probably it's more popular in Japan than in the West, of course. There's that as well. But it's and maybe, let's face it, was not as successful as Media Vision hoped. But again, if that's the case, why keep churning out sequels? Because most of the games were developed on the PS2. We got Wild Arms 3, 4, and 5 on the PS2, and the remake of the first game, Wild Arms Alter Code F, I think it's the title or something like that. So at least half of the series was on the PS2, and then we got 1 on the PSP and 2 on the PS1. So it's been a long time, obviously, but also it's all focused there. They just keep shitting sequels. And maybe they're good, because the last game I actually played is Wild Arms 3. I still haven't got the chance to play 4 and 5. And XF, even though I own XF. Which is completely different. It's a strategy RPG of all things. So I think in this case, a sort of reboot could be the right decision, for example. It depends how much the games are connected with each other, and I'm not sure about that. I don't remember, because it's been such a long time. It's been a long time since I've played Wild Arms, so I don't remember if the games are all connected with each other. But I don't think so. I don't seem to remember it was that way. It was more like Final Fantasy kind of sequel, so each game it's its own thing. That will make things easier. And by the way, there's also, I got it over there, there's also a Wild Arms anime, of all things, but it's not very good. But apart from that, I was just saying, it for sure it has a following. So I think a reboot might be an interesting decision for Mediavision. Just develop for PS4 and maybe Switch, because of course there's the portability option there. A game, call it Wild Arms, just be vague. Don't call it Wild Arms 6. Just say Wild Arms and maybe you can have some subtitles, or I don't know. And what do we need by Wild Arms? What kind of game should it be? I think for Wild Arms, the most important thing is maintaining the core elements. So it needs to have its steampunk-ish Western setting. That's mandatory because that's what Wild Arms is. Because as a consequence, you have that phenomenal Western soundtrack. Oh my God, the music in the Wild Arms series is so good. Like the first thing that comes into my mind is the battle music in Wild Arms 3. It's so good. Listen to that when you have the chance. It's fantastic. So you need that setting. Also, I would keep the sort of adventure explorations feeling of the first game. I remember, for example, with I think it's called Jack, exploring these caves. There are some scenes that remind me of Indiana Jones, of all things. That you're looking for treasures and stuff like that. That's very cool. I would maintain that. Also, I would have the game looking more like self-shaded. There you go. I was thinking about it. I would have a gorgeous self-shaded graphics, kind of like Dragon Quest XI, for example. Don't use too exaggerate anime, kind of like too Japanesey sort of graphics. I don't want, because I like that. That's not the point. But for example, compare Final Fantasy 15 and Dragon Quest 11. I would go for a Dragon Quest 11 kind of graphics every day of the week. That looks amazing. So that kind of graphic engine. And again, I wanted to be focused on this adventure feeling, kind of like an Ys game, that you always have that feeling that you're on an adventure. Story-wise, I don't know. I mean, it could be an hour-long video if we start to speculate on random stories for a Wild Arms game. But also, in terms of combat system, and that could be also very interesting. Because, at least up until the third game, I'm not sure about 4 and 5, those were traditional turn-based RPG. So we can have that. As I said in my previous video, if well done, turn-based RPG are still a thing. Look at Octopath Traveler. But of course, people are going to look at that like in a sort of snobbish way. It's like, oh, your turn-based RPGs, those are ancient, you know. Which of course they're just talking out of their asses, because I think turn-based is still the best way to play an RPG, in my opinion, but as I said, that's just me. So it could be interesting. I mean, first and foremost, it can be a turn-based RPG. Maybe it can be a strategy RPG. I mean, I haven't played it. Maybe Wild Arms XF, it's a phenomenal strategy RPG. I don't know. I haven't heard much about it, so did people even play that game? So there's that. Or, even more interesting, I think it would be very cool for Wild Arms to be more like Trails of Cold Steel in the combat system department. Hence, a mixture between turn-based and strategy RPG. Because if you play Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2, that battle system, it's amazing. It's absolute perfection. It's like a sort of update version of a turn-based system. Just add the strategy here and there. Your characters can have all those different skills, and then you can have an interesting connection with the Wild Arms themselves. For example, I think it would be very cool to have the Wild Arms developing as like the quartz in Treasure Cold Steel. So you have a sort of materia system. You can explore the world, finding different or unique Wild Arms to equip your characters. They offer like stat boosts or unique characteristics and all of that. That would be pretty neat, actually. I can see that. So I think that's how I would do a new Wild Arms game. So a sort of reboot, but it needs to maintain certain core elements from the previous games. And then, of course, I don't know how connected the games are, but I think you can avoid that. But that's a series that needs a reboot to me. So that's my first choice. Wild Arms, make it happen. I think with the Cold Steel combat system, you can even have your open world or whatever. I mean, exploring and living great adventure with an interesting cast of characters. I would definitely play a game like that in a Western JRPG setting. That would be amazing. My second choice, and that's more obvious coming from me, but I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet because I've been reading about it for years, and that is Dino Crisis. How is it possible that we don't have a new Dino Crisis yet? Well, it's Capcom. I know the answer, but it's baffling to me. I mean, there is one big problem, and that's Dino Crisis 3. That thing basically killed the franchise. So, we haven't had a new Dino Crisis game since 2003 on the Xbox. And that thing, I mean, that's a horrible Dino Crisis game. I've played it for about a couple of hours, I think. It's not a bad game per se. Wait, don't dislike the video already. It's an awful Dino Crisis game because I have my entire conspiracy theory in mind. Basically, I think that a team at Capcom was developing this sort of like space, like this action survival horror game in space, and show it to Capcom's executives, and they say, this game is not going to sell well. Wait, I have an idea. Let's put dinosaurs in space, and just slap the Dino Crisis title on it so more people would buy it. Damn, we're good at our job, aren't we? Obviously, Dino Crisis 3 was, what do you expect, a big fail, a big flop, because what the crap was that? Even better, I think that they were developing that whatever was survival horror in space for the Dreamcast, and then they moved it to the Xbox, because why the hell was Dino Crisis 3 on the Xbox and not on the PlayStation 2? Like, the previous two Dino Crisis games were PlayStation exclusives. So that was in development for the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast went under, completely a failure again. And then, put Dino Crisis, put dinosaurs in space for whatever reason, and just slap it on the Xbox. Done. Give us money. You're welcome. So, yeah. I can see that happen, actually, to be honest. So let me know what you think about my conspiracy theory there. But all jokes aside, honestly, if you play the game, it really feels like that. A bland action horror game in space with dinosaurs, and it's called Dino Crisis 3. So it really feels that way. So what do you need from Dino Crisis? Do you need a sequel? Not immediately, in my opinion. And that's why I was thinking about this video. It's not just about reboots. It's about using your brain to do the best, to adopt the best strategy for different series, because each series has different situations. So for Dino Crisis, I think what Capcom needs to do, first and foremost, they need to reignite people's passion for this game. That's back on its heyday on the PS1, it was a big deal. It was a really popular series. Honestly, I think that Dino Crisis 1, it always contends the title of my personal favorite survival horror game of all time to Resident Evil 2. I absolutely love survival horror games, especially those old school ones on PS1, PS2, because I absolutely love the tank controllers and I love their B horror movie feeling to them. So, and I think Dino Crisis hit that perfectly. I mean, with the dinosaurs and the crazy story, but I love those games. I love Dino Crisis 1 in particular. And for some reason, I really always liked Regina very much. She's one of my favorite female characters of all time, and she's a character from survival horror game. It's not that it's a crazy, well-developed character out of an RPG, you know. But for some reason, I really liked her. Um, so I think, as I said, Capcom should reignite people's interest in the series because a sequel out of nowhere will have a lot of hype, and then if it's not, like, it would feel out of nowhere, and then if it's not phenomenal, it would just, I think, fall down flat on its face. I think, and I'm surprised that it didn't happen, for example, on the Wii. We need, first and foremost, a remake of the first game in HD, gorgeous, gorgeous looking. Because the first Dino Crisis, it's a fantastic game. Everybody needs to play it. Um, you can have it like there are two ways they can do it. A remake. It's, you see, there are multiple options here. First and foremost, they can have a remake like they did for Resident Evil 1 on the GameCube and the Wii. So maintaining the 10 controls that work very well for this kind of games, actually. I know that some people are actually jaded on 10 controls, but I think they're perfect for survival horrors because they're clunky. I mean, nowadays, with all this Dark Souls craziness, I mean, 10 controls are an art, apparently, or clunky controllers. That's kind of the point of the Dark Souls games for what I get, for what I got. But beside that, yeah, I mean, I read an article, I think, and also heard like people say From Software made clunky controllers into an art. 10 controllers came first, and that's the entire point. They're clunky on purpose because not having a perfect controller over your characters increases the fear and the tension. It's absolute perfection for survival horror games. Like the limited camera angles, the 10 controls, it works so well. I don't understand why people don't like the 10 controls. So you can have it like Resident Evil 1 on the GameCube and the Wii. Honestly, like Resident Evil 1 on the Wii, it's like one of the best survival horror experience I ever had. And an interesting thing, they also added extra content, so you can have a bigger remake of Resident Evil 1 in that, of Dino Crisis 1 in that fashion. I would buy that in a heartbeat. I would love something like that. That's why I say I'm surprised they haven't done it yet. And even also, you can have option B. You can remake the series, or let's stay focused on the first game since it's by far the best. I mean, I like Dino Crisis 2. It's a good, fun sequel, but you can already tell that it's not as good as the first ones, especially because Capcom was already going for that all-action route with Dino Crisis 2. You're just running around shooting dinosaurs and getting points so you can buy other weapons, ammunition, med packs. I was like, what happened? Where's all the tension? It's where's the atmosphere? It's all bright and colorful. As I say, it's a good sequel, but and it's still a fun game. But all the good elements of the first one were gone. So you can have a remake of the option B. You can have a remake of the first one in the same fashion as Resident Evil 4. So with that sort of combat system. I don't think it will work as well as more traditional 10 controls, but I think people would like that more. But I don't know how well it will work with dinosaurs, honestly, because zombies, you got these massive things coming at you slowly, so you have time to aim and all of that. But the dinosaurs, I think they should be fast, they should be vicious, and it should be hard. So I don't know how well the control scheme will work. I would prefer 10 controls all the way. So after you have reignited interests in the fans with a good remake, then you can make a sequel, a proper Dino Crisis, technically Dino Crisis 3, but let's say Dino Crisis 4, because they need to bring closure to the story in Dino Crisis 4. That fucking thing ended on a cliffhanger. I still want to know what happened. Because don't forget it. I mean, don't forget, Dino Crisis 2 also involved time travel. Why not? So it's like Regina is back to her own time, but she needs to go back to the future to save Dylan and Paula. What's going to happen there? I mean, I always wanted to see how the story is going to end. I wanted to see Regina, Dylan, and Paula all together at the end of that, but who knows? Well, and there's also always this one issue that I have with Dino Crisis. I think they kind of wrote themselves into a corner there, which is the strength and the weakness of the series, and that's the dinosaurs themselves. And what I mean is, if you have dinosaurs in a modern setting, you have to explain how the fuck do you have dinosaurs there. And I think Dino Crisis 1 did it perfectly with its B-movie explanation. I love that. The third energy experiment created this portal in space and time from which dinosaurs arrived. That was perfect. I love that. With Dino Crisis 2, as I said, A, it involves time travel, and B, it was very lazy because they just repeated the same thing. It's like, oh, they repeated the experiment with the third energy. Again, another portal, more dinosaurs. It felt lazy, but as I said, the game was so much fun that I didn't care at the time. But personally, I think they should have done something like you have dinosaurs and they simply reproduce, so you have to hunt them down because you have dinosaurs running around in the modern world. That's not good. That could be interesting, actually. It's not the deepest storyline, but these games are not about deep stories. As I said, they're B-horror movie type of games. So you can have something like that. I don't remember, was Jurassic Park 1 or maybe 3 actually hinted that the dinosaurs were just leaving the island and reproducing themselves. What was that quote? I think it was from the Avengers that Nick Fury said they're reproducing as fast as Catholic rabbits or something like that. That was funny. But so definitely something like this for Dino Crisis. I think you need a good remake of the first game because it deserves a remake. That's survival horror gold. And then a proper sequel to bring end to that story. And if these two projects are successful, you can move on to make new games or whatever you want. But you cannot leave Dino Crisis in this shamble states as they are. I mean, with the last game we had is that shit Dino Crisis 3. I've read multiple times over the years that both Capcom and now even Shinji Mikami, after he left Capcom, they all say, we want to bring Dino Crisis back, but we don't know how, because Dino Crisis 3 fucked up the series very well. So, again, this is the most it's not very likely it's going to happen because it's been, as I said, 2003 since Dino Crisis 3 and 2000 since the last good game. So, but at least they're telling us they're thinking about it. I don't know. I think this could be an interesting option for the series that we really deserve. We need a Dino Crisis in our day and age. Just imagine Dino Crisis in HD on the PS4. Oh, that would be so good. And finally, my third choice, and this is in a way the most fascinating and the most unlikely of the three, because it's in a complicated status. And that is, I would love Shadow Hearts to come back. I don't talk about this series very often, actually almost never, but Shadow Hearts is actually one of my favorite RPG series ever. I love these games. I love Kudelka and I love the trilogy on the PS2. The problem is we didn't see Shadow Hearts since let me check, 2007 in Europe, when Shadow Hearts 3 from the New World was released in Europe. So probably, let's say 2005, 6, when it was released in Japan and North America. It's been a long time. However, this is not laziness or nothing like that. The problem is that the studio that developed Shadow Hearts simply doesn't exist anymore. The games were developed by a studio called Satnoth. You're probably asking, like, what the fuck is that? They also called themselves Nautilus later, but the problem is that, as I said, they went under. I don't know if they just went bankrupt or something. They also developed a game. What's it called? Now I have to check. What's the name? The thing, they developed this game for the Neo Geo Pocket, the Neo Geo Color. What's this? Let me check in a second. Sorry about this. I'm not well organized here. Let's see. Facile, there you go. Facile on the Neo Geo Pocket Colors, both of them. Sorry about that. It's just like to say they also had something else other than Shadow Hearts. Yeah, because the Neo Geo Color Pocket, and that's a best-selling system there. So no surprises they disappeared. But the thing is, Shadow Hearts was kind of a big deal on the PS2. I mean, we got 3 games after all. And I would absolutely love this series to come back, because it's so different from your typical JRPGs, both in the gameplay department, but especially in the story department. I love the horror theme of the games, and especially I love the settings of all 3 of the games, especially 2 and 3. Shadow Hearts Covenant, the second game, which is, by the way, I think one of the best RPG ever played. That takes place in World War I, if I remember well. Again, I haven't played the games in a long time, but I'm pretty sure it takes place in World War I, while From the New World, the third one, takes place in the 1920s in the States. So it's so interesting. Like, they should... Whoever will make a Shadow Hearts new series, they should exploit this unique element. So, first and foremost, someone needs to buy the rights for Shadow Hearts, because of course the company doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it's there up in the air. I don't know how complicated these kind of things are. Honestly, I don't know how expensive like the Shadow Hearts rights could be. I mean, it's a series from a long time ago. Maybe no one feels that investing money in that property, which it's a JRPG, it's been a long time, it's not a very safe investment. But again, how much money would it cost? I don't know. So you need a studio, hopefully someone with money, to buy the rights for Shadow Hearts. Let's live in Fantasyland. How about, for example, Falcom? That would be amazing. Falcom making Shadow Hearts game, but I don't know. Even Sega, so Atlus can work on Shadow Hearts. That would be amazing, actually, since they're also like very good in darker RPGs like the Shin Megami Tensei. That would be pretty awesome, actually. So after that, what could we have for new games from Shadow Hearts? I think first and foremost, they need to maintain the combat system, which was very unique, but it was a lot of fun. I love the combat system from Shadow Hearts. Maybe they could update it in some way. I don't know how, but they can do that. But don't upset it too much. Like, for example, let's make it like an action slash RPG or something, because that would just ruin it. So I would maintain the combat system, and I would focus on the setting. Like, take advantage of the uniqueness of the settings of the Shadow Hearts series. How about making a new Shadow Hearts game that takes place in World War II, for example? That would be amazing! You got this fantasy, darker take on history like Shadow Hearts 2 did. In World War II, you have Nazis. I mean, the sky's the limit there. Imagine you can have a sequel to that that takes place during the Cold War with the Soviet Union and stuff like that. That would be phenomenal, I think. It would be very unique, first and foremost, which is a good thing to have something original. And it would work so well. So this would be quite a challenge, again, because of the status of the Shadow Hearts series. But it's worth it because it would give us back such a great RPG series. How about like having it for the Switch? Imagine having Shadow Hearts on the go. That would be phenomenal again. So cool. I know it's never going to happen. Probably nothing I've been talking about is going to happen. But again, I like to wonder the possibilities, I guess. Because sometimes these studios just they give up. So I say fuck them all, let us dream. Okay, it's time to go now. I'm just rambling. So these are the 3 series that I would love to see back in, like, I love to see revived in 3 different ways actually. So let me know what you think, and definitely do video responses. What are some series, long gone series, that you think they need to be back, and how? Because that's also an interesting challenge for you. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Take care.